Andrew Chambers is the founder and CEO of Tsunami Sport, a well-known sports clothing apparel brand that has kitted out national, regional and club sports teams around the world, as well as a large number of international schools. Andrew represented Hong Kong rugby at 15s and 7s and knows the Hong Kong rugby scene very well. He recently moved to New Zealand with his family to live a more sustainable life. He's not afraid to speak his mind, and hopefully he'll do just that on the podcast today. So welcome to the show, Andrew, and tell us a bit about that leadership journey you've been on.
Well, it's been a leadership journey of trial and error, to be honest. Falling into an industry that I had no previous sort of educational background in from university. I found myself making rugby kits because, quite frankly, I couldn't find any good ones that I wanted. So it's definitely been a entrepreneurial journey from start to finish, and well, it's still going on now, so still learning every day.
I'm interested in your mindset there, Andrew, right from the off. You know, you've said you were playing rugby, you had no intention of being in textiles, fabric, sales, kit making or manufacturing, but you couldn't find a decent rugby kit. So what made you, chuck in maybe other career plans and think about actually doing something way out from what you were originally planning on doing?
I think it was possibly the environment that I was in. We were based in Hong Kong, which is obviously a city of amazing opportunities. You meet people that can make those opportunities come to fruition. And that just seemed to be the way it was. I was a development officer at the Hong Kong Rugby Union at the time. And as always, if you're bottom of the ladder, you tend to get fobbed off with all the rubbish jobs, which tended to be dealing with the kit guy, which I don't take personally anymore, but at the time. So I just found it a very sort of difficult process. It was hard to find really good quality gear that fit and ticked the purposes of what we were looking for at the time. So, and my then business partner Nigel was actually playing a little bit in that sort of teamwear field as well. So we both set about this journey of trying to make the end user's life a bit easier and also trying to do a bit better on the side that he was looking at.
Tell us a few bits about those tentative first steps. What were the first things that you did to actually try and get this off the ground? Because you're talking about a company now that provides sports kit to, teams and schools all over the world.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think a lot of people who talk about business and say that, they had this grand plan and there was no luck involved. I generally don't believe that. Luck plays a major part, and it certainly did for us. I think the timing of when we started as a brand was pretty critical. It created some amazing opportunities for us. But sorry, can you just repeat the question again? I've gone off on one.
It's all right, I've forgotten as well. No, so I was just talking about those first sort of steps that you took. What were they? What did they look like towards making Tsunami what it is today?
Yeah, look, I think we found partners who would allow us to do the things we didn't know how to do. Allowed to tick some initial boxes that we wanted to, the initial reasons for setting up Tsunami. They allowed us to tick those boxes, but they also removed, for example, the production side for us was something that myself and Nigel had very little experience in. So we found some partners, obviously saw opportunities in us as well, because, let's not be honest, they didn't do it out of the good of their heart. They were also making money by, acting as a middle person for us as a supplier. But we definitely sort of, from those opportunities and meeting those people, they were the ones that basically allowed us to run the business. And then actually sport was the one that opened up a huge customer base for us through the rugby community in Hong Kong, and also the corporate community that actually played a role in making the rugby community such an affluent sport that it was in Hong Kong at the time.
And what did this look like, Andrew? In terms of, you sat down with, did you say your old business partner was called Nigel? Sat down with Nigel, piece of paper in an office, right? We're gonna make some kit, Nigel. What do we do here? How does this work?
You've just nailed it. I mean, how we produced some of the kit that we did, given the information we provided to this factory, is beyond me. It was almost like hand-drawn sketches. It was pretty average gear, and it's a miracle that we did make the stuff we did. And look, I just think for us it was we didn't have a long-term vision. There was an opportunity that presented itself, and we kind of rolled with it. And within a year, we've established a profitable business that, and to this day, our most profitable years we've ever had were the first 2 years of business. And that was, we had no overheads. we were basically working off deal for deal, and we were literally working for no salary either. So the business grew really quickly. And as that grew, it started, and the competition then came into Hong Kong. We started identifying where we wanted our vision to be, because we had to actually find a unique selling point, rather than being two rugby boys that were just enjoying selling, kit with no real competition, selling kit and actually making a reasonable amount of money at the time.
You talk about the USP there. Give us a bit of an insight into what the Tsunami USP is.
So I think you touched on the intro that we have been, and I'd like to hope it will remain, the leading driver of environmentally and sustainably driven teamwear apparel. And this came about probably 2 years. Well, it was 2 years into having Tsunami established. We were producing in a factory where all the other brands were also producing, and we probably had the smallest marketing budget out of all those big brands. And therefore, the only thing that was differentiating us was actually maybe design work, which the other brands were increasingly getting better at as well. So we had to go and find something different. We'd also then become a lot more familiar with where we were producing our products. And we weren't doing anything wrong, but they certainly weren't a visual representation of what we wanted our product to be, or where we wanted our products to be made. So we set about a bit of a mission to one, try and find a more environmentally driven product, and also actually to produce it in an environment that we would be slightly more proud of than the places that were already making our product.
And your experience, obviously, as a sports development officer, and you've played rugby at a high level, how did your values that you demonstrated in sport, how did they transfer across to business?
I refer back to a lot of my leadership skills and just general day-to-day values that I live by have all come through sport. I think we often, you two, we've talked about it in terms of, I wasn't the most academic kid and really craved and thrived those sort of Wednesday afternoons when rugby was on or football was on or PE. And those values that I learned through that was basically about grafting, hard work, and what became almost what my favorite word, which is grit, was just a bit of tenacity. And the more people told you couldn't do it, the more I had a desire to do things. And I think in the business world, for sure, look, it's, I still find it a bit odd that, I'm sitting here talking about leadership or talking how business has gone, because, from an educational point of view, I now see that the educational model that I was in failed me hugely. It just didn't suit me. And actually, I've learned very quickly and self-taught myself through trial and error how to run a business. Granted, it hasn't been, we're not a ginormous business, so those mistakes haven't been hugely costly. But, we've experienced them, we've learned from them, and we've evolved just through those experiences. And I guess that's very similar to a team environment, right? You learn from every, defeat or win. You take something away from it, and the good and the bad. And I think that's exactly the same that what I've got from my sports world.
Yeah, you've touched upon mistakes there, and one of the clear ones for you guys, establishing a brand called Tsunami, and then the Boxing Day famous Tsunami hits. How do you respond to that?
I mean, it was interesting. I mean, first of all, I think visually for everybody, it was a pretty horrific time in mankind to see nature probably do one of its most blatant devastations that it had. And it was so close to home in Hong Kong as well, with a lot of people in Thailand and Sri Lanka at the time during Boxing Day. And look, we initially, I'll be honest, probably for about a day, it didn't really hit me that our brand was associated or would be associated to what had happened. And obviously that came to fruition quite quickly afterwards when people started talking about it. And the event obviously affected a lot of people. But like I say, we started off on a next to nothing budget. And everything we did have, we'd put into ordering labels and packaging and all that type of stuff. So from a financial perspective, we were almost tied by the fact that we couldn't change the brand name. We also didn't have a good name in mind afterwards anyway. We did talk about it. So we actually pushed through, and it probably helped us visually as a logo, because we dropped the word tsunami for probably about 18 to 24 months in certain areas. So our logo is quite recognizable in certain parts of Asia, rather than being, the brand Tsunami Sport. So we pushed through, but it was certainly about being very sensitive to the people that it would have directly affected.
Yeah, tell us about some of those other mistakes you might have made along the way. Really interested in that.
I mean, there's the big visual ones. I mean, we've always prided ourselves on and believing that our product is our best advert. We've always believed that if you get our kit on, then we hopefully have got you for life. Because we believe strongly that our fabrics and our cuts, etc., are the best in the market, and that's what we really want to deliver, is not just a sustainable message, but a really good product. But the most blatant one on a world stage was we were looking for any opportunity to get our kit on the international rugby stage, and that opened up with Madagascar. We didn't hunt them down. It was an opportunity that landed on our doorstep, that Madagascar were coming to the Hong Kong Sevens. They were going to play Fiji in their group, and we had an opportunity to kit them out. First of all, we totally underestimated the size of those guys from Madagascar. They were tiny, so they got a lot of big kit. And then they not only did they get some big kit, they got kit on that Friday night at Hong Kong Sevens. It bucketed down with rain. And when they walked off the pitch, luckily they've got the big sponsorship hoardings and stuff on the field. So they were all covered in these sort of Cathay Pacific and HSBC prints. But the shirts had run into their white shorts, which we picked up pretty quickly, and had a bit of a panic. And, I guess it builds, we might touch on it later with regards to relationship with suppliers. 24 hours later, Madagascar had a brand new produced kit back over the border and ready for their Saturday afternoon game. So that would have been pretty catastrophic if people had recognised that, we basically sent these guys out in a kit that was running in one game of rugby in the rain. Wasn't going to be a good thing for us.
And it is a learning process, isn't it? And I love the fact you touch upon trial and error, and you get things wrong, and you're honest and you hold your hand up. How important is that honesty when you're leading an organisation, to say, you know what, I've got that wrong, I'll move on and accept and take responsibility for it.
Yeah, look, I think integrity, and if it's like when you're a kid. If you tell your mum and dad fibs, it will catch up with you at some point. And it's like that in business. I believe if you haven't done a good job, I think you've got to put your hand up and you've got to rectify it quickly. And sometimes some of our longest standing relationships have been built on an error. And it's how we've delivered and reacted on that service and that fix that is actually established and built in that relationship. Because, the last thing you want if something goes wrong is to be, uncontactable, unavoidable. I think you've got to be at the end of that phone and go, actually, we've had a few situations, but actually we think we might have a product error. We've actioned this fix. Let us know how you go. And I think that says a lot about the brand, and that says a lot about the values that we have in our expectations of our own product, that I think is exactly the same as what a customer would expect. So, look, I think it's very important that you put your hand up and you rectify your errors very quickly.
Good stuff. The values you've touched upon there, where you've got your hard work, your grit, your graft, as you call it, did you take them and try and put them as part of the vision for Tsunami, or was there other people involved that then shaped your values?
I think I think myself and Nigel were very similar in terms of our characteristics. In terms of we were both hardworking individuals in the sports field. Probably not the most skillful, but we made up for that with endeavour and hard work. And I think that was exactly the same from a business perspective, that we knew that we were going to have to put the hard hours in. And, there's no doubt about it, through the whole process and to this day now, hard work still is outdoing my planning and all that type of stuff. I'm not the best planner, and there's certainly on multiple areas I could have probably done things a lot more efficiently and a lot quicker had I maybe sat down and planned a bit better. But I just think at the end of the day, I think you can always make something work if you've got, you know, a bit of a desire to get there. And I guess as you grow, those financial consequences get bigger, and you've got to be a little bit more calculated. But I still think you've got to give something a go. If your gut says go for it, I still reckon you've got to back your gut.
Yeah, back in your gut. And we can just go in another avenue there, where recruitment. So do you recruit people who share your values, or you try and get that diversity in there? And similar to what you've just said there, do you then employ someone on that gut basis, or you're going on the data evidence that comes in?
I don't honestly think I could sit down and tell you what qualifications 95% of my staff have got. There's skill sets. Obviously, your accountant needs to have certain qualifications to fulfill their roles. But for example, sales staff, it's about personality. It's about their background. You know, where have they come from? What are their passions? You know, does it excite them to do their job? I really do believe that you build a team on characters, and you're always going to have your salesman's always going to be like your striker, or your fly half, or whatever it may be, and he's going to be your rock star. It's how you manage that and how your team around him sort of facilitates that kind of the ability to let him be the maverick, so to speak. And I think that it kind of fits around that. And I have certainly found this year through COVID, it's been a real test from a human resource point of view in terms of managing people's expectations, the highs and lows that people are going through, the difficulties that they're having from family to even slightly on a mental health perspective. You know, people react very differently to having exercise removed or having social opportunities removed from them. Definitely is, I've seen a correlation in the workplace of how people have behaved. But going back to your question, I think I will probably, if it's a 50-50 call, I'll probably pick a personality over a higher qualification.
So a lot of the people that work at your place, Andrew, would follow those same kind of values of hard work, grit, graft. Do you try and recruit from that same sort of sphere of essential skills?
Yeah, I think so. If you work in a small company, you can't hide, and you've got to have the ability to be flexible and adapt to opportunities, and actually be asked to do roles that might be above and beyond what you're supposed to be doing. You fake it till you make it sometimes, and you've also got to put some accountability and I guess a little bit of responsibility on your team to make decisions for you. I don't want to be a dictator who sits there in my company and makes decisions. I actually want my team to grow into those roles and make decisions for themselves. As long as the vision is clear and where we're trying to go, you'd like to hope that they would make a decision with the best interest of getting to that vision as quickly as possible, or at least support that vision. So they're all kind of instilled with that authority to make calls, or the best judgment call within their sort of roles.
How hard has that been for you, Andrew? Going from, like you said, the guy in the office sketching out the designs and doing everything, and not taking any kind of wage or salary, and this being your life, to now starting to step back a little bit and allowing other people to make those decisions. Just describe the challenges of that to us a little bit.
Well, it's been magnified because I moved to New Zealand. I've only managed to get back to the office once this year, which I'm missing it hugely. I'm missing the work environment in a really big way. I'm one of those people socially. I love going to the office. Probably a bit of a distraction, like I was at school. But it's I've been very lucky that the team that I have, and we've had to scale down because of COVID. The team that I have got is probably the ones that buy into the vision the most. They play those. They've been in the company the longest, or they play a senior role in their departments. So I'm very lucky in that I trust them, and it has been very difficult. I was a little bit sort of micromanaging, a little bit power crazy at some points, where if I've got a vision, and I can be a bit narky, there's no doubt about that. And I guess that'll touch on one of my leaders, where I think I'm trying to be a better person, maybe not as grumpy as I can be at times, but I've got to start trusting. For example, the creative team, they're considerably younger than me, and I have to recognise that not everyone wants to dress like a middle-aged man on the rugby field anymore. People, there's certain styles, designs, cuts that for me are quite ridiculous. But at the end of the day, that's where the sports are evolving to, and the expectations of that sort of generation who are buying our product are at. And I'm not there anymore. Before it was easy, I was selling to myself. So by default, if we want to be successful, I was always going to have to relinquish some of those responsibilities.
And how hard was that? How hard was that conflict of, this is my company, this is what I've built, this is everything I'm about, and then actually allowing yourself to step back and say, okay, I might not know the answer to this, and I've just got to take a breather and let other people do it. Did you learn that through making the mistakes in the first place? Were there people working with you that were honest enough to point that out to you, or what was that another way that you worked that out?
I think it's like imposter syndrome as well. I've always struggled to be the boss, so to speak. I don't feel like a boss. I don't feel like I sit above anybody else and anything like that. And I do recognise that people come to me for certain things, but so I've never really said my company, my way, or anything like that. I've always had a relatively sort of democratic way of doing things, and I think that also comes down to probably a lack of confidence that comes from school, where I just didn't feel confident in my own conviction. It was always about sort of looking around, going, actually, don't worry, 4 or 5 people also think we should do this as well, and it also reassures me, and it also means that I've got a buy-in from my team. I'm also awesomely lucky that my brother is our creative director. He's my little brother, so he's slightly, well, not slightly. He's got his finger on the pulse a lot more than I have. And in true brotherly love, he's got no problem telling me the truth. And sometimes in the most unprofessional means possible, but he does tell me that, and that's been really awesome for me, because I know that he will tell me. And I've also got, for example, Gareth, who is our global head of sales. Gareth will tell me if I'm being unreasonable, delusional, and he will very comfortably tell me his opinion, and I really value that, and it's important, because actually quite often, dare I say it, that they've been correct, and I've got to relinquish that and not be embarrassed to say, well, actually, yeah, you are right. Actually, I love that, because that instills confidence among the whole team that actually you can challenge JC and he will listen. And there's times where I've said that's ridiculous, not going to happen. This is where it's going to be. But I'd be very disappointed in myself if I removed that environment where my team didn't feel comfortable about challenging me, or at least putting their opinion on the table.
Yeah, definitely, and I think that's worth exploring. There's a couple of different angles I'd like to explore there. I think the first one is that sort of idea that, like you said, there are times when it might be a democracy, and it might be something where actually, let's take in people's opinions here. We've got to work this out together, because I don't know the right answer. There'll be other times, as you alluded to there, where you just say flatly, no, that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen that way, and it's going to happen the way I want to. How do you decide which one's right and at which times? Is there a magic bullet for that? Is there a magic way of doing it?
I guess it goes to gut. And then you do now, very lucky that, like I say, we've got that team. It might be a decision that's been, held back by a financial decision. What are the consequences if this does fail, if it doesn't work? A lot of it actually is usually around product and design. So the consequences of the error aren't necessarily humongous. And I've had a couple of told me so's. I did a pair of polka dot board shorts once for an event for merchandise. I overruled everyone. Everyone said it was ridiculous. And in fact, if you want a pair, I've still got a bucket load of them in the warehouse, because we hardly sold any of them. And it's my, and that was probably one of the first times where I did override the team, where it was literally everyone was going, AC, you've lost the plot. And I was like, no, these are going to sell these. They're going to be awesome. Hideous. They don't look great. I made a mistake, and I put my hands up. And it's a running joke in the office every now and again. The old polka dot board shorts that never quite sold. So
not necessarily a procedure that you go through in your head, no checklist as such. It's that gut feeling that you automatically go back to and think, if this is something that's worth sticking your oar in about and being stubborn around, or whether it's something where there is some flexibility.
I think the biggest one, and it's everything that we are as a brand from my DNA, is our sustainability side. it's the one sticking point where I have refused and will refuse to deviate. Or, there is no doubt about it. My sales team could sell 50% to 100% more kit if it wasn't sustainably produced, because we could be slightly more price competitive. We could source from markets. There are so many things that we could do to cut corners that would remove our unique selling point, but we could make a lot more money. And I think that's where it's the one thing where everyone knows that you can challenge AC all he wants, but he's not going to budge on this. So all the other things are up for grabs. I'll talk about anything, new products, if we can make it sustainably. And that's ultimately what it comes down to. If we can make this sustainably and it's not going to be a huge detriment financially if it wasn't to work out, then let's go for it. But that is the one thing where it's a non-negotiable. Everything we produce has to have a sustainable aspect to it. And we have to be producing it in the most environmentally sensitive way that we can.
You talk about non-negotiables there, Andrew, and what about if you've got their members of staff that don't really buy into your vision, and they're not really buying into your core values, and they're displaying behaviours that are against your non-negotiables? Tell us about where that's happened and then how you've dealt with that situation.
I mean, we do joke about the walk of shame. So if anyone comes home, comes in, they're not nude and we're not whacking them with anything, but it's one of those things where I think the environment's being set. The logic behind what we're doing is, we're not bonkers. There is logic behind for example, our sustainability values. Single-use plastic, etc. There is reason behind that, and I think a lot of people, it's a major question in interview about it. And what do you do from a sustainable point of view? And people have to see value in what we do. Otherwise, they simply wouldn't fit into the environment that we've already created. And look, people do challenge it, and you need that. I think it's really important that you see both sides of it. But the gist of what we do, and it goes all the way to the suppliers as well. We don't have suppliers that don't buy into our values. They're an extension of us. They represent us. They produce our product. So we need to know that the DNA and the origins of where our product is coming carries the same values that is inside our office. And the staff are an extension of us as well. So if you see one of my staff members at a function or something like that, and they're behaving in a what would be deemed as pretty poor characteristics or whatever it may be, then that to me is a reflection of us we're a small brand. So they are a direct extension. I think everyone takes that responsibility on quite seriously. So we've never really been in a position where we've been challenged that way in terms of someone really against what we're about. A lot of people apply for the job for the very reasons of what we do stand for. So touch wood, we haven't really been faced with that sort of uncomfortable situation.
Yeah, that idea of people applying and knowing what you're about, I think would be apparent. You are a unique brand in terms of sportswear and apparel. You hear a lot of stories on the news, whether founded or not, around where Adidas kits come from, where Nike kits come from. And you early doors in this conversation said, listen, you wanted to separate yourself from some of the practice that you saw that was going on. That wasn't that you were doing anything wrong. Certainly wasn't illegal, but it was doing something in a way that maybe didn't sit right with you. So tell us, what is it about that sustainability? We spoke to Darcy Lunn a couple of months back, and I know that you've done work and you know Darcy, and he talked about teaspoons for change. He talked about everybody making a small change to what they're doing, whether it's your plastic straw, your plastic bag. If everybody did that consciously, that's going to have a huge impact on. So you could have done one thing along your chain, couldn't you? You could have decided upon one thing, whether it be manufacturing or marketing or production, but whatever point it was, you could have made one small change, and that could have sat with you, I imagine, quite comfortably. And you could have thought, okay, as a company, we're being responsible here, sustainably. We're trying to make a small step to help. What made you actually go the whole hog and decide, well, actually, this isn't enough for us. We're going to be completely sustainable as a brand and do something completely different? Because that's a huge thing to take on, isn't it?
Yeah, look, and I don't want to pretend that we decided on day one that we were going to be, everything we've done has always been sustainable. And we've actually made exactly what Darcy sells, that teaspoon for change. We've made incremental improvements on us as a business and as individuals and everything we're doing. And we're far from perfect. There's loads, my list is as long as my arm in terms of what I'd love to be doing. But within the limitations that we have, if we can do it in a certain way, we will. And we're constantly addressing different aspects. For example, our current suppliers that we use now, where we've been very lucky that we've actually met them very early on in their existence. So they've allowed us to make an impression, and they bought into our vision. So very quickly, from a production side, we've managed to find sort of partner factories that have made their incremental improvements as well. And likewise, by the way we source. And it also has come with expertise. We have a production manager called Kai who's fantastic. And, there's so many facets of our product, from our trims to our packaging to our fabrics, that there are so many little incremental improvements that we're always making there that, for me, even my lack of knowledge in that field, are being made, and I'm being informed about, going, wow, I didn't even know we could do that. And I think that's what's really important, that people, there's what's the phrase where, we actually need everybody doing sustainability imperfectly rather than a few people doing it perfectly. That's all we need. We need people, and certainly in my industry, we need the industry to be looking at itself and finding a better way to produce what they produce. And we need our consumers to also think smarter about why they're buying things. Do they need things? Where's it coming from? And asking those questions. Because at the end of the day, your customer is everything about your business. If they start asking questions, they'll drive the change. And I think that's what's really important, that all of the little things that we've done. I get quite excited when someone, that's not true, I don't get excited, but I do get motivated when someone calls me out on something. Our latest packaging, for 4 or 5 years, the packaging we're using, we thought was the best packaging going, but actually it was awful. And very quickly someone pointed that out. Now, we could have reacted to it in a way like, no, this is what we do. But actually, no, I sat down with the lady and she explained her view on it. And we made it our mission within minutes of walking out of that meeting that we need to go find better packaging. And that was, the ability to listen to people. And I think you guys, we touched on it before about that feedback or not doing a good job and how you react to it. We could have just got our back up and defended ourselves. No, we do everything right. We're the most sustainable brand. But we're very honest in that we know there are always going to be improvements. And certainly where the industry is going, it's so exciting. There's some of the smart things that people are doing. We've just got to be, and the industry's got to be willing to adopt those and give them a try. And if you find the right customers, actually they also get excited by the opportunity of pioneering a new fabric or things like that. And I think that comes down to transparency and being also very clear of the values and of where the brand's trying to go.
Yeah, and then that idea of taking on feedback and being able to respond to that appropriately, and like you said, not be defensive and not be and not feel attacked or aggressed by that is a real skill, isn't it? That's not an easy thing to do.
Oh, I'm not going to pretend. I've said a few curse words about her as well, but she just put a pile of work on my desk. But it is. You're 100% right. You can take feedback in any way you choose to take it. And look, there's feedback we've received that we have ignored in terms of we believe that we are doing right, and there's always going to be someone with an opinion, but I think it's important to listen to people's opinions and then come to a conclusion from that yourself. And look, like I say, we're a small company of 20 people, 20 plus people. And actually, it's great to get feedback from customers because they've got a perspective that we don't have. So perfect. I encourage it.
Yeah, for sure. To tell us a few of these ideas that you've got in the pipeline that you talked about. You said you got ideas, a list as long as your own for sustainability.
Oh, look, we've got a fabric, and I don't want to give away too much, but there's an opportunity from a fabric perspective that I believe will revolutionize the way we look at polyesters and man-made fabrics, and the way we can definitely produce it in a better means. And I'd also I believe people are critical to any business, but I certainly think for the ability to produce on demand, technology plays a major part in that. And I think there's some really exciting innovations that are going to come with technology and the ability to produce products quicker, probably more accurately, with significantly less wastage. And that's one of the biggest problems that the textile industry has, is actually the amount of wastage that we produce, probably more through mass production, not so much the teamwear industry. But from an environmental point of view, that is a major problem that needs to be addressed.
Let's touch upon the effects of COVID, Andrew. And I know from being involved in a startup school myself, and a budget that's had to be reduced because of decreasing student numbers. And I'm sure you're seeing it in business where people are pulling out of deals, or where they're not providing, they want a cheaper product. How do you align that with your then values? Because that's hard, isn't it? Because you want to provide as cheap but with good quality, and then a school might come to you and say, look, we can't afford to do that, we want a cheaper. With the current situation that's going on in the world.
Yeah, look, it's been a really difficult year. There's no way of disguising that. It's been a real eye opener. I mean, it's highlighted some really cool relationships that we thought we had and we have got, and which has been great. It's also understanding, and I've always thought sort of communication is critical, and you'd like to hope that the relationships that we've forged, particularly with schools, and the added value that we bring from the educational side and etc., will carry you through this difficult period. And it's about, I like contracts because it cements that kind of relationship. But at the flip side of that as well, I think contracts can actually limit you to actually doing a better job. And I found that with a few schools where they've assumed that they're tied into a deal or a price list that potentially is, yes, that worked for you 2 years ago, but circumstances have changed. And I think that's important that we've demonstrated over the year, and it's credit to the sales team we've got, that we've been very proactive of going and understanding schools' positions. Some schools are great, they're doing fine and things are cruising along. Other schools in very different positions, and we've always sold ourselves as trying to be a partner rather than a supplier. And it's about forging those relationships so that we can help find solutions, and emphasize that just because the contract has a minimum spend on it, let's be honest, the world has changed, the climate's changed. We want to maintain a long-term relationship. So how can we maintain that during the difficult times? And I think we will come out of this year with far more cemented relationships than we did before COVID. And we've gained some as well because of our values, and we've also lost some. So it's been a real up and down year for sure.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough for us all. And when you look from those perspectives of schools, where if they can cut costs on kit, it can save a teacher's job, and you've got to look at where the priorities lie. And how do you, when you go into schools or organizations, what do you do in terms of marketing your sustainability? Because it is a real key, unique selling point. How can we get that across to the whole parent and school body?
Well, first of all, schools have focused us because the next generation is the kids at school at the moment, and they're going to be the consumers for the future, the decision makers. And that's one of the reasons behind that. And it's about educating them to the reasons, they're exposed to, such an incredibly frivolous consumer mindset, that trying to change that is pretty critical for us. The educational side for us is the added value, is that we want people to understand why we do what we do. And it's important to say that we aren't more expensive than a lot of brands, because schools have allowed us through economies of scale to meet those price points now. And I think that's what's really important, that actually to do good doesn't always mean that it's going to cost you more. And touching the parent base has always been, very, I think, when we first met at British School Manila, I frivolously offered Simon Mann an opportunity to have a bit of a town hall opportunity and welcome the parents in. And there was one mum there that she was gunning for me, and it was a really really interesting experience to understand what she was after, and but to have that platform to explain things, everyone left that room with a very clear picture and understanding why at the time British School Manila had made that decision to go down the sustainable route, and I don't think anybody begrudged the school that decision, and I think that was really important. And it's also, like I say, the opportunity to sit down with kids is awesome. We talk about feedback. They've got some of our best ideas. All of our sock packaging is 100% way we fold our socks to the fabrics we use to package them has 100% come from what used to be a plastic packet in a long drawn out sock. Over 3 different students have progressed that packaging. So we get a lot from kids as well. So it's a bit of 2-way traffic.
That sounds amazing, and it just reminds me of those kids in Bali from the Green School there who did the beach cleanup and organised the zero plastic policy in Bali. That's amazing. It is something that we'd love to get kids involved in, is that sustainability message, because it's the think, feel, act, rather than just, oh, here's my beautiful kit. How have you actually got that kit? Where's it come from? What are you actually doing to save the environment as a result of it? So we absolutely love that. But tell us a bit now then, Andrew, about the move to New Zealand, because that seems to be the centre of all things green. How's that gone in terms of a family choice to be more sustainable as a living choice?
Look, it's been a really tough year as a family, just because we were a very close family. So all of our family, grandparents, uncles, and aunties, are all in Hong Kong. So from an emotional point of view, it's been really quite tough. We're a bit family sick. I wouldn't say we're Hong Kong sick, but we're definitely family sick. And but coming to New Zealand's been, it's been incredibly lucky. It's a country that is pretty much, bar 6 to 8 weeks, has managed to almost have a normal lifestyle. Kids are at school, people are playing sport. You can travel the country, and it's an amazing country with regards to opportunities, from surfing to skiing to great trail running and live sport on. So New Zealand's been very special, and we've really loved it. But it's been a real eye opener for me as well, because my perception of New Zealand was that it's an incredibly green place from an environmental point of view, and it's not. They've definitely got things in place and infrastructures are falling into place, but it's not quite where I thought it would be, and that's added a bit of I wouldn't say frustration, but it's definitely made it more difficult for our product to be sold, because we sound a bit wacky, to be honest, because it's not something people are looking for at the moment, is a product that's made sustainably. So it's been a very different, a lot of the sales tools that we've used globally, we've had to water down a little bit and trying to make it a little bit more, I wouldn't say simpler, but just a bit more outlining the issues of why we make the product the way we do.
Wow, it's another example of how the context shapes the narrative, eh?
Oh, I mean, I walk down the beach here, and if I see a piece of plastic, it's literally like, oh, you just don't see it. New Zealand is a phenomenally beautiful place, and the reason that your Manilas and your Jakartas and your Balis are having these massive plastic drives, because it's such a visual problem. When you're sitting in the shores of New Zealand and you don't see any plastic on your beaches for weeks on end, it's not a problem. So why do you need to source a sustainable product? Why do you need to change your mindset when you walk into, your 7-Eleven type place and go in and buy your bottled Coca-Cola? It's not a problem here. Well, out of mind, and that's the way it is here. It's not in sight. It's out of mind. It's not a problem, and it's a global problem. It's not a problem that belongs to Indonesia or Philippines or Hong Kong or anything like that. It's a global problem. So
it's interesting, because you are so far away from everything. Do you feel that in the mindset of the country? Because you read the books about the All Blacks, you watch the programs, I think at all costs, and on Netflix, and you see that their values are very much actually in line with your company values. Is that that honesty and that graft, is that how you feel it is like in New Zealand?
yeah, look, I think it's hugely relationship driven. And it's about you've got to earn the trust of people here, and that doesn't come quickly. There's no way of fast tracking that. And it's that trust in the product as well. And because we're on the ground here, but not as visually as some of the other brands. So it's about building up that trust, not only in the product, but also me as an individual and anyone else who does represent us. It's about building that. And that's been something that I like. I mean, some of the values and characteristics of New Zealand that I've fallen in love with is, common sense exists here, which is just gold. Having lived in Hong Kong, the computer says no, has been very frustrating. But moving here, the autonomy and people having the ability to make decisions and think on the spot has been really quite refreshing. So, and also the language barrier. It's the first time that I've ever lived somewhere where the mother tongue is English, and it's been quite really quite refreshing.
No, it's certainly a place. When I visited, I could live there tomorrow. It's a wonderful, wonderful place. And you touch upon relationships there, and you've alluded to it throughout the podcast, how important relationships are in any business. As the CEO, what do you think are the core, real sort of core values of having relationships at the center of your thinking as the CEO?
I think trust is so important, because a lot of the people that we would be dealing with, let's say, for example, schools and sports clubs, a lot of the people who are responsible, even in procurement of a school, are not specialists in the apparel world. And therefore, there is a huge amount of trust placed on us to make the right decisions on their behalf. And I think you've got to build that trust for sure. Reliability. In that, I think if you don't do a good job, your product's not reliable, your service is not reliable, you're not going to last very long. It needs to be an easy process. So for me, they're the two most important things. And also, I think you've got to stand by your values. I think very quickly you get found out if you're greenwashing or you're not standing by the values that you've got. And we're working really hard now to really open up the transparency of our supply chain so that people can really understand where we're coming from. And that is all about building that trust and that understanding of what we're trying to do. And that gets them to buy into it as well. And I think if we share those values, we look for the same values in return, which are not always easy to find, and can be quite frustrating sometimes. But when you do find them, it's really rewarding.
Oh, brilliant, Andrew. We're going to look to wind it down with our quick fire questions now, just to finish off. So I know you love these ones, Andrew. So your three people that you would love to go out for a meal with, dead or alive, Andrew?
Oh, so I think I'd have to go. Well, I've got my three leaders that I think they inspire me. So I'm going to go with those three, which is Yvon Chouinard, who's the founder of Patagonia. I think he's built a brand with incredible principles and values, and he's managed to move into the modern world and not digress from those. And I think that takes a lot of willpower to do. So he'd be one person I'd love to rack his brains.
I tell you what, Andrew, sorry to put in, but have you watched that Varsity Blues on Netflix, where it's about the scam of getting kids into American college? The guy who organized the scam, throughout the Netflix product, is wearing Patagonia products. I was thinking, I bet the owner of Patagonia doesn't like this because he's getting identified with a guy that scammed and took in millions to then get kids into college. And I wonder if he knows about that. Is that a sort of thing allowed, Andrew? I don't know.
Yeah. People have probably not noticed, but now you've just gone and told thousands of people.
Thousands, steady on.
Go on then, who's your next ones?
Nelson Mandela. I just found him, obviously, as a rugby player. What I saw, I've got no connection with South Africa whatsoever, but what we saw in that World Cup and the way that he used sport, the way in which he turned adversity, and actually, you think what happened to him and how he pushed through that to make a better change. I would love to be as good a human being as that. I don't know if I'd quite be good enough to do that because I still resent some teachers. So how he went through what he did, and then moved on. And the last one, this will make you two laugh, given that my last answer last time we spoke was Alan Shearer. It was the Dalai Lama. I'm working very hard on trying to be a better person myself, and the philosophies that Buddhism has and things like that. I'm not a religious person whatsoever, but the philosophies and the way of living that he communicates and demonstrates is certainly something that I would love to have that mindset, because I'm not very good at switching off either in terms of stress and stuff like that. So they would be my three people that I'd be incredibly intimidated with those three, to be honest, because in terms of the achievements they've got, I'd have to. In fact, I'll probably put Alan Shearer. I'll have to invite him and give him my seat. I'll have Alan Shearer there. In case the chat gets boring, I'll chuck him in and we'll just talk.
He'll probably have a fight with him, to be fair. Lewis, to finish.
Andrew, what does infinite learning mean to you?
We've touched on it a lot. I think it is the ability and acceptance that actually you don't know everything, and opening your eyes up, willing to listen and willing to adopt opportunities, even if they contradict something that you possibly used to believe very strongly in.
Lovely. Can you tell our listeners, all those thousands of listeners, Andrew, can you tell them where you can read more about Tsunami Sport or the work that you're doing at the moment?
Yeah, so obviously we've got our website, which is tsunami-sport.com, and we've got a great page there with regards to covering all our sustainability goals and the history of where we've come, where we're trying to go. So a lot of that stuff there, and obviously we're also on LinkedIn, which is the grown-up Facebook. We're trying to grow up, so we're on LinkedIn as well. And we've not got a big marketing team, so we're always very reliant on our product and word of mouth. So if you see anyone wearing Tsunami, give them a tap up and tell them what they think.
Thank you, Andrew. Top man.
Oh, awesome. Thank you, you two.
Guys, search Infinite Leaders Live on YouTube and IGTV. We're on all popular podcast platforms, and we're at theinfinitelearners.com. We'll see you next time. Thanks a lot for tuning in. Click subscribe, leave us a review, and we'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.